Hey everybody, hope you're doing all right. We didn't really get a chance to address you. We had a guest lecturer last week for the weekly YouTube video. That lecturer got mixed reviews, so I apologize if you weren't into his particular groove. But we'll pick up from there. We got a little bit to say about sexual harassment. You can think about things in terms of most of the things we talk about in this class in terms of prevention and promotion. And they're kind of different mindsets, and people can sometimes get locked into one or the other. It's a good idea to kind of be aware of both prevention and promotion. Promotion, of course, meaning ways to make your life better and to enhance things and to grow, and then prevention, limiting harm. And the sexual harassment is one of the kind of the few things that's just squarely in the prevention mindset. One of the things that we read in the article that nobody mentioned that just stood out to me was I think I don't actually have the article with me, but from what I recall, it was something to the effect that there was a substantial number of men who, when asked to imagine, a woman approaching them in a threatening manner with a knife, that they would view that as a positive sexual opportunity. I think that's really all you need to know about the differences between between men and women. I also like that article because it kind of opened the door to thinking about things in terms of being evolutionarily minded, and we saw some of that in the David Brooks article, "Why the Good Do Bad," when he mentioned some of David Buss's very disturbing research on murder. So let me back up. I'll come back to David Brooks in a little bit, but I want to talk about something that I feel a little bit strongly about, which is this the article, "Why Be Honest If Honesty Doesn't Pay." One of my least favorite things that we do as faculty in the School of Business, and also students, is we say it's good business to be honest, and that's why we should be honest. And I've got kind of two problems with that. First is that article was filled with examples of people who were successful in part because they were dishonest, right? There are plenty of cases where dishonesty pays. So I question that premise. But even if we assume that that's true, which I'm not confident that it is, I think in the long run, of course, the business is better off being honest. But in the short run, it can be very profitable to be dishonest. But anyway, let's just assume that unambiguously it's profitable to be honest. The idea that you should be honest because it's good business puts being profitable as the highest goal and puts honesty as sort of a sub goal to that is inferior to the primary goal, which is making money. And I think that's wrong. So, my own take on this question of why be honest is that it's fairly simple, but it's that life is better lived as an honest person than as a dishonest person, and I don't think we need to think about honesty as a strategic way to profitability. The other article I want to talk about a little bit is the dishonesty of honest people. I think that's a great article and one that I hope will stay with you for a long time. One of the main takeaways from this, and I think most of you read this article, one of the main takeaways is this idea that people want to benefit and enrich themselves by being dishonest, but not to an extent that they have to change how they see themselves and consider themselves dishonest. So you leave out a plate of cash, and the author, I don't know if I don't think this is mentioned explicitly in in the paper, but he did a couple of other experiments that he talks about in one of his books, where he went on college campuses and he left a tray full of dollar bills on a refrigerator, and then he also put Coke in a refrigerator. and one disappeared and the other didn't. Right? It was the Coke that disappeared, and the Coke disappeared because people can steal that without feeling like they're being dishonest. Right? But you take cash, and it feels like you're being dishonest, and so the cash was much less likely to disappear. So we've got these two goals: enrichment and seeing ourselves as honest, that should be in conflict, but oftentimes we find a way to satisfy both of them, and I think that's a problem. And being aware of that problem, I think, helps us to be more honest, to kind of go from being people who are mostly honest to people who are thoroughly honest. I can give you an example, probably a lot of examples, but one that stands out to me is recently I was filling out some paperwork. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I think it's important to just be honest about this too. I was filling out some paperwork, and I was in a position to just make it look like I deserved more money than I did. And I started to go down that road, and I caught myself and remembered this topic that I teach semester after semester. And I was embarrassed that I had kind of been willing to go that way, but I caught myself and backed up and remembered, this tension between wanting to just cheat a little bit so that we can benefit, but not so much that we have to consider ourselves dishonest. I hope that that's something that stays with you long down the road. Another thing I want to talk about is the David Brooks article, "When the Good Do Bad." I think that is, it's super short, but also very, very interesting. He says something at the end that I want to read because I think there's a lot of wisdom here. He says, according to this older view, Robert Bales, the guy who did this terrible act, like the rest of us, is a mixture of virtue and depravity. His job, and this is the part that I think is worth paying attention to, his job is to struggle daily to strengthen the good and resist the evil, policing small transgressions to prevent larger ones. And that's the point that I think is really important. You prevent the large transgressions by policing the small ones. You don't end up doing something that's truly terrible without making those kind of intermediary steps, right? So you prevent the small transgressions, and that's really the job that we all have, is to prevent those small transgressions, and that's how we prevent the major ones. Okay, last thing that I want to say, and kind of related to this, is that I'm endlessly curious about people, and I'm also a bit of an experimentalist. I like to do little experiments and just kind of throw things out there and see how people respond. And I've done this in my role as a teacher for a long time. And this is what I can tell you unambiguously: if you promise students that they'll get 3 bonus points for doing something, and they do it, and you only give them 2 points, you will hear from probably 98% of them, or maybe 95%, but students will respond. They know when they've been cheated, and they will let you know. But reverse it: you promise everybody 2 points, and you give them 3 instead, and you will not hear anything. I've done this probably with 1,000 students, and almost nothing. There's one exception, and he's actually in this class, and this is partly why I mention it. Jameson Porter is a student in this class. The only person I've ever had say something when he was given too many points. Now, everybody will speak up when they don't get enough, but it's a very different kind of person who will speak up when they've been given too many points. So he deserves credit, and also I'll mention Craig Corey. He wrote an essay about being honest that I thought was really inspiring, and he had kind of his own personal example that I won't describe. He can describe it if he wishes to in the discussion, but I thought was also really awesome example of being honest. Anyway, I will say one other thing about this. The reason that we value honesty is that it's costly. And when somebody comes clean, we typically know that that's going to cost them something, and that's why we value it. It's not because it's profitable, but because it's costly to the individual. All right, I think that's all I've got for this week. Your next set of readings on leadership. There's a lot of short little readings, and I don't think they're too hard. You will read about Steve Covey, and you'll read about Steve Jobs, and they're very different kinds of business minds. But I think I'll leave it at that. You've listened this far. I might as well give you an Easter egg. I don't know what color we're to yet. We're gonna. Why don't we say mauve? I don't know what mauve looks like, but you found the mauve, the crappiest color Easter egg, mauve. So thanks for paying attention. You guys have been really good this semester. We're almost to the end, so keep up your good work, and I look forward to seeing your papers on leadership.